One, greetings from Washington, D.C., and welcome to today's Research America Alliance webinar. As always, thank you for your partnership and your participation in the Research America Alliance. So I think you guys all know the drill. All audience members will be on mute. We will certainly save a nice chunk of time at the end for questions. You can either unmute your line for a verbal question at the end or type your question into the Q&A box. And my colleague Terry will pose those. So today we're joined by Dr. Jon Lorsch, Director of the National Institute of General Medical Sciences. NIGMS supports basic research that increases understanding of biological sciences and lays the foundation for advances in disease diagnostics, treatment, and prevention. NIGMS supports more than 3,000 investigators and 5,000 research grants, more than 10% of the total number of research grants funded by NIH. We're going to talk to Dr. Lorsch today about cutting-edge COVID-19 initiatives and also the impact of COVID-19 related costs on NIGMS funded basic research. Dr. Lorsch, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for attending. I will give you an update on some things that are going on at NIGMS. Of course, this is just a snapshot of a few things. And I hope to save significant time for questions. So let's get right into it. As you heard, I want to tell you a few things that we've been doing related to the pandemic. Very early on in the pandemic, actually in late February, it became obvious that we were going to need to do some things to allow researchers that we support to pivot to make contributions to a rapid response to COVID-19. And so we put out several funding opportunity announcements for urgent competitive revision supplements to existing NIGMS grants in a couple of areas. The urgent award mechanism allowed us to review those very quickly and to make the awards within really a few weeks of getting the applications. We at this point have made 27 awards, probably a few more already this fiscal year, to 23 different projects with an investment of about $8.6 million so far. The two areas that we focused on were research on modeling and forecasting the spread of SARS-CoV-2 and the effects of possible intervention strategies on the pandemic. That's because NIGMS supports a significant amount of research in infectious disease modeling. And also repurposing of diagnostics or therapeutics that were currently under development by small businesses in our SBIR and STTR portfolio to allow them to pivot those diagnostics or therapeutics for use against COVID-19. And we reasoned that these two areas, which were again something that we supported, were places where rapidly changing direction could allow quick impact onto the COVID-19 pandemic. As I mentioned, NIGMS supports a significant amount of research. Actually, I think we are the biggest funder, along with NIAID, of infectious disease modeling studies at NIH. And in addition to individual research grants in the area, we also support the Models of Infectious Disease Agent Study Coordination Center, or MIDAS Coordination Center. The center plays a number of key functions and has been really pivotal in the response from the research side to the pandemic. It coordinates and facilitates infectious disease modeling research, but both within the US and also with overseas partners. It provides access to researchers to curated data sets, models, algorithms, code, parameters, and importantly, more recently, cloud computing services. It also has been serving as the main point of contact for public health agencies and the academic modeling community. They actually have coordinated 5 separate calls per week with the CDC on different topics since the beginning of the pandemic, and that continues to be ongoing. This is an open network where if you or someone you know is interested in this area of research or is conducting infectious disease modeling research themselves, they can fill out a very easy form and apply for membership, which has quite a few benefits. And already the network has over 500 members. I think it's actually approaching 600 at this point, and it's gone up probably close to 50 or 60% since the beginning of the pandemic. And these are researchers funded by not just NIH, but also NSF, other US and international organizations. I should say the MIDAS Coordination Center is housed at the University of Pittsburgh, and Wilbert Van Panhuis is the PI who's been a really tremendous partner throughout this whole pandemic. One of the things that we've learned in working with the MIDAS Coordination Center and this pandemic is the critical need for better access for modeling researchers to data. This is something that historically has been true, but has become really acutely obvious during this outbreak of COVID-19. The kinds of data we're looking for researchers to have access to are multiple, but they ultimately would ideally be individual level patient sorts of data related to the outbreak, but also other kinds of data, policy data, demographic data, geographic or mobility data, all are critical for trying to model the course of the spread of an infectious disease and model how different kinds of interventions might interfere with it and mitigate it. The kinds of data we're looking for would be as close to real time as possible. If they're 6 months old, it's good for retrospective analyses, which may tell you something about moving forward. But if you want to know what's happening and really test your models in real time, you need as close to real time data as possible. We've spent collectively with Wilbert at the MIDAS Coordination Center and my staff well over 100 hours on different phone calls, trying to get access to modelers for these kinds of data. And I have to tell you, so far, we have not been terribly successful. I think this is a major need in the research ecosystem that has been laid bare by this pandemic, and something that we really need to pay much more attention to moving forward. Having thousands of different health record systems in this country has not been a particularly good model for understanding the course of the pandemic. Based on the troubles we had, it became pretty clear that NIH was going to sort of have to do something for itself. And so this effort was led by the National Center for Advancing Translational Science, NCATS, with help from the Office of Data Science Strategy, led by Susan Gregorek. The resource they've set up is called the National COVID Cohort Collaborative, or N3C. It is a warehouse that hosts a variety of different kinds of patient COVID-19 related data for research purposes. And NIGMS became closely involved in this some months ago when we funded a supplement to the West Virginia IDEA Clinical and Translational Research Center to allow them and 7 partner clinical and translational research centers to harmonize and share COVID-19 related patient data. And to date, about 9.3 million patient records worth of data in anonymized form are being provided to the N3C initiative through this IDEA State collaborative. For those of you who don't know, the IDEA program is a program that funds research capacity building and training in states that historically have not received very much NIH support. And so the CTR's mission is to build clinical and translational research capacity in those states. And if you want to learn more about N3C, there's a really nice video that NCATS has put up on their website that can tell you more about it. We've also been involved in a number of other partnerships across NIH related to COVID-19. We are an integral part of the RADx UP, the Underserved Populations Program Governance Committee. So this is a program that's focusing on testing for COVID-19 in order to understand better the health disparities that have become so clear because of the pandemic, and to try to, through understanding them, find ways to mitigate those health disparities. We've also worked very closely recently with Dr. Collins and the Office of the Director at NIH, along with the Foundation for NIH, to engage those IDEA CTRs I just mentioned in the active therapeutics and vaccine trials. So active is a partnership set up by Dr. Collins with a number of the major pharmaceutical and biotech companies, along with a number of other funding agencies, to organize the clinical trials for COVID-19 that are going on in the US and worldwide now. And this initiative to get the IDEA CTRs involved as sites for these trials has really taken off. A number of the CTRs have already signed on, West Virginia really leading it, signed on, I believe, to all of them at this point. And a number of others are following close behind. And that provides a really tremendous diversity to the populations that are being that are getting access to these trials and are able to be enrolled into these trials. And so that's something we're quite excited about. Obviously, everyone is concerned about the lost productivity that's taken place and is continuing to take place because of the pandemic and the shutdowns associated with it. The area that we're focusing our resources on that we have available to mobilize for those purposes really falls to junior investigators, who we think are really in many ways the most vulnerable at the moment, particularly people with fellowship or career development awards who are nearing the end of those awards and were getting ready to apply or had just applied for independent positions. And those independent positions obviously can have fallen through, or they may not exist at the moment, and therefore those people are in significant jeopardy. So what we've been doing is contacting all of our F and K awardees whose fellowship or career development grants we're going to end. We started with the ones we're going to end by October 1st. We've just done the next round that we're ending in November. And we'll probably do one round after that, and inform them that they could apply for paid funded extensions of those awards if they had significant needs. So over and above just the typical loss of productivity. So for example, a fellowship awardee might have significant childcare responsibilities in addition to trying to keep her research going. That was over and above just the lost productivity that everyone else faced. Or someone may have applied for jobs or been about to apply for jobs, and those have fallen through, and therefore we're putting them in a position where they can apply for paid extensions. And we've so far made 35 paid extensions to individual F and K awardees. I said we just brought the second group in, and we'll probably be paying some more of those. But this has been our real area of focus, is making sure that these people don't fall off the map because of the shutdowns that have occurred. Wanted to give you a little update on the Maximizing Investigators Research Award Program, or Mira. Some of you may know this is a flagship program of NIGMS we're hoping a new paradigm in how we support investigator-initiated research. The overall idea is that this is one NIGMS research grant per PI. So when an investigator applies for it, if they get it, that is their research funding from NIGMS. They aren't eligible for other additional NIGMS research grants with a few exceptions. But because of that, these are longer awards than the standard NIGMS R01s. They're 5 years instead of 4. And they, and very importantly, have significantly increased research flexibility, and we hope also stability. So they're not tied to specific aims. Investigators can follow their noses, if you will. If a new opportunity or observation arises during the course of their research, they can change directions during that work without the constraints that are imposed upon them in an R01 through the specific aims. So we hope that's going to be a much better way to get more innovative, sort of cutting edge, quick time science. And we're also hoping to make it more stable to allow people to take more risks and be a little less concerned with just kind of turning the crank as they might be with an R01. Very importantly, we have two parts of this program. We have an established investigator part of the program and also an early stage investigator part of the program. So early stage investigators who are just starting their labs can apply straight into the Mira program instead of into an R01. And what we did was to separate the reviews of the established investigators and the early stage investigators. So separate panels review them. They're not reviewed together at the same time, so that the early stage investigators can just be compared to early stage investigators and not to, say, National Academy members whose grants also happen to be reviewed in that panel the way they are for R01s. We think that's a much better way to allow new and innovative science and scientists to get into the system. So the program, we started in 2015. The first awards were made in 2016. And this plot shows the number of R01s given by NIGMS or supported by NIGMS in each of those fiscal years. In orange, the number of Miras supported by NIGMS in each of those fiscal years. And then the black line, which is the right-hand axis, shows the percentage of that pool of grants R01s plus Miras, that was Miras. And what you can see is that's been growing steadily, linearly over time since 2016, such that now about a third of that portfolio is Mira. And we're hoping to continue to grow that until it becomes a strong majority of our portfolio, which will really give us really the best transformation, I think, and the best impact of this program on the system. Going along with this, we've seen a tremendous rise in the number of early stage investigators that the Institute supports since we started this program in 2015. That, of course, is in part because Congress has very generously increased our budget over the time period as well. And we have made the strategic decision that one of our main priorities is supporting early stage investigators. But the other reason is that we've seen a 60% or more increase in the number of applications from early stage investigators since the Mira program started. And you can see that since 2015, we have actually almost doubled the number of early stage investigators that the Institute supports per year through R01s, importantly Miras, R35s, and through the new Innovator DP2 awards. And this just says 2019. I can tell you that 2020 is actually even higher, another record of over 260 early stage investigator grants funded newly that year. Most of these grants now are R35 Miras. So this shows the progress of the early stage investigator Mira program. Again, we started giving those grants in 2016, where about 50% of the new early stage investigators awarded grants were through Mira. In 2019, it was a strong majority of about 2/3 or so going as Miras. And I think this year, 2020, was about 75%. So clearly ESIs are speaking with their feet and going into the Mira program as their main point of entry to NIGMS. All right, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our diversity and training programs, which is a major part of NIGMS's portfolio as well, and particularly one new program that we've just launched called the Maximizing Opportunities for Scientific and Academic Independent Careers, or MOSAIC program. So this program we started because a variety of different studies had indicated that although over the past 25 years, there has been a significant increase, almost tenfold in fact, in the number of people from underrepresented groups getting PhDs in the life sciences, that hasn't translated really at all into an increase in diversity at research-intensive institutions' faculties. And so there's clearly was a point of failure, if you will, in which we weren't getting a transition of those PhDs from underrepresented groups into faculty careers. And so that's what this program aimed to target. It has two parts. There is a postdoctoral career transition award to promote diversity, which is a K99 R00 award that's diversity focused. The K99 supports the fellows for up to 2 years during their mentored postdoctoral work and gives them more independence and more freedom during that time. When they transition, which we hope they will all do, into independent faculty careers, they can then transition the award to the R00 phase, which supports their research for up to 3 years and hopefully gets them off to a really good, strong start as independent researchers in their own positions. The second part of the award or the program is an institutionally focused research education cooperative agreement to promote diversity using this UE5 mechanism. And what that is an award to professional societies which serve as additional mentoring and nucleation centers for cohorts of the K99 R00 fellows. So these professional societies provide additional mentoring, team building, career development opportunities. They'll help them, the fellows in their application process for faculty positions, negotiating startup packages, etc. And we've just made the first awards of those UE5s, and they went to the American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, the American Society for Cell Biology, and the Association of American Medical Colleges. We have had now 3 rounds of applications come in for the MOSAIC K99 R00. We've just made the first batch of awards and we'll be announcing those soon. And the second one is undergoing review. And I'm pleased to say that the diversity of this group has been tremendous. 75% of the applicants over the 3 rounds are from underrepresented groups in the sciences, and actually 75% about are female as well. So really shows what you can do with outreach and getting diversity to these programs. And those fellows, as they're selected, will be associated, depending on their areas of science, with the different UE5 scientific societies, as I said, for additional mentoring, career development, and skills building activities. What we'll do is every year we'll give an additional round of these K99 awards. They'll be associated with the UE5s. And at steady state, which will be in year 5, NIGMS is intending to fund 75 MOSAIC K99 R00 scholars. So it will be quite a significant group of very diverse and very talented individuals who will be coming into, we hope, the academic research enterprise. And I hope your institutions will be keeping a close eye on these people and will be going out and recruiting them when they start to come onto the market. Other piece of good news is that most of the other NIH institutes and centers that give grants have already signed on. So 15 have signed on, with several more going to be signing on for the next round, including several that have signed on to give additional UE5 awards. So we're hoping to see at least 1 or maybe 2 more UE5s in more clinically oriented areas of research to fully serve the fellows that may be coming into this program. Finally, the last thing I just wanted to say is something sort of fun. We've been doing a lot of work to help trainees of all ages during this pandemic as they try to navigate education and research in this virtual world. And actually, as luck would have it, we had a great resource already for K through 12, or really middle school and high school students in place, which is that we had worked out a collaboration with Scholastic, the big educational publishing house, to publish a magazine devoted to basic biomedical research and careers in basic biomedical research called Pathways. It reaches an estimated 2.5 million middle and high school students and 19,000 teachers in every state in the country. They bundle it with their flagship science magazine called Science World. They have lessons plans in each issue for teachers that map to curricular standards, so the teachers can really use it in their curriculum without it being a diversion. And associated with it are free online activities and videos that feature NIGMS-funded scientists and researchers. And these are really pretty cool. You can go see them. You can download the PDF of the magazine for free. And please let any middle high school students you know about hear about this, and please any teachers you know as well. So with that, I'm happy to take questions for a while.
Thank you, Jon. I want to remind our audience to please type your questions in to the Q&A box, and Terry will ask those. I'm going to throw out a few to begin with, a moderator's prerogative. Well, Jon, first of all, just listening to you, it's just exciting to see all the work that you're doing to support the work of early career scientists, including those from diverse and underrepresented communities. And I was really pleased to hear you talk about the extent to which other institutes are involved in that program. It's really great. In terms of the science education piece that you mentioned at the end, your work with Scholastic and your Pathways curriculum, are you seeing an increased interest in that curriculum that might be related to COVID-19?
We did see a spike. So Scholastic, does a great job of tracking the metrics of use. They obviously have a really deep network of teachers and educators. And so they did see a spike certainly during the shutdown, although we don't have the latest round of data, but I'm anticipating that what you said will be true. But we certainly have seen also a really tremendous uptake of the virtual resources that went along with it. In addition to games that they've developed that were very popular, they're using something called Kahoot, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a thing that many teachers and others use to do quizzes in a fun way, kind of like a game show.
Mhm.
And the two cahoots that they made for that so far, so there's one that's about circadian rhythms, and then which we put out when the time change happened to coincide with that. And then there's the one about superbugs, which obviously is quite timely for the current situation. They're both in the top 50 of all the cahoots that are out there in terms of use. I think one of them has 100,000 users or
Wow,
something like that. So
that's great to hear.
yeah, they've done very well.
Terrific. Terry, would you like to
Yeah,
jump in with some additional
yeah,
questions?
sure do. This is great. So one question, given the number of basic science discoveries that have driven our understanding of COVID-19, do you expect the pandemic will impact a greater national focus on basic research, maybe more of an emphasis?
I think that question's quite right, that whatever aspect of the disease or the response to the disease you look at has many, many roots in basic science. And so that case is one that I think we need to continue to make. I think luckily we have people like Francis Collins and Tony Fauci who make that point very clearly and frequently. And so I think the rest of us should also make that point. But I think that's exactly right. And one hopes that it will increase people's interest in basic science, including young people who will then go into basic science.
Great news. Another question that's come up, has NGIMS worked at all to combat any of the science misinformation surrounding COVID-19 specifically, and also public trust in science?
Well, those are both important issues. I think all of us at NIH are frequently speaking to various kinds of stakeholders at different levels. I know I have, and I know during those conversations, whether they be with a high school class like I did a few months ago, or with a group of interested adults, from the general public, questions come up of things that are misinformation or misunderstanding, and we try our best to combat those. Certainly Francis and Tony, of all people, are doing tremendous work in that regard. So I think that's certainly true. The second part, I've now blanked on what it was.
Oh, trust in science more
Trust in
broadly.
science, yeah, absolutely. I think that is also quite troubling, how trust in science actually has, unfortunately, among some groups, taken a hit during the current situation. And so I think that's something that we're going to have to continue to work on moving forward. And I know Research America is a leader in that regard.
Absolutely. We're working on it all the time.
Mhm.
Question that's come in from the audience, considering all parameters that need to be considered, are there any current models that have traced accurately the spread of COVID-19? And have these models been used for policy decisions?
Yeah. Well, so in terms of the models, there are definitely models that have been fairly accurate. One of the things that's been done by one of our investigators that we support at the University of Massachusetts is to aggregate many of the different models. And they started doing this quite early on, and then comparing them to each other so they could track which ones did the best and which ones maybe needed more tweaking. And so I think, I think that's been quite informative. In terms of the interaction with public health and using models to inform public health, there has been communication, as I said. So the Midas Center has weekly calls. At one point, they're doing 5 calls a week with the CDC. I think it's down to maybe 3 at this point. It's something one has to be a little cautious with, right? Because we fund research, and by definition, the research is because we don't know how to do that thing perfectly, and maybe not very well at all. And yet one would like the models right there to tell us exactly what's going to happen. So we're always trying to, be careful and walk that line of hoping our researchers are working closely enough with the public health agencies to, give them reality checks and feedback, but not necessarily becoming too wed to any particular model until it's really been proven that it works. So that's a difficult line to walk. And unfortunately, because of the timeliness of these things and the ease of understanding of the output of models frequently, the news media very much likes, to talk to modelers understandingly. But I think, again, that's a double-edged sword because, the caveats don't always come through in the final product of those stories.
Great, thanks for that answer. Another question, it will take a while to evaluate the effectiveness of new mechanisms of funding, such as MOSAIC, but have you evaluated the success of funding early stage scientists with these K-99s? And are there results in terms of faculty positions and long-term contributions to research?
So not for the MOSAIC program, because of course we've just given the very first K-99 awards in that program. So it's absolutely brand new, but we've built into the program an evaluative component, as actually we do in all of our programs now. So we'll be tracking outcomes, both short-term and long-term. The K-99 program itself, there have been a variety of different, at least outcomes analysis. I don't necessarily want to say full evaluations. And depending on how you look at it, I think the data are promising in that a very large majority of people who get K-99s, at least from NIGMS, go on to get faculty positions. So that's promising in terms of what the desired outcome is. Now you have to be careful about selection bias, that the people who got the awards were probably inherently more likely to get faculty positions. You also have to worry about whether or not there's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that if you give people this kind of money, then they'll get more faculty positions. But within those caveats, I think we felt that targeting such a program to build diversity could be a nice complement to other programs that were going on at the NIH and elsewhere.
Great, thank you. Another question, will your institute be supporting any new future basic science aimed at SARS-CoV-2, such as an example, enzymology of the various protein factors? Would such initiatives allow for new GM funding for Mira awardees?
Absolutely, people can apply for investigator-initiated grants, right now from GM. Although, because we are really focused on basic science with a few, specialty clinical areas like sepsis and anesthesiology, if your work is specifically focused on a pathogen, it's probably going to be funded by NIAID. But laying the foundation for all that is the basic science we support. And one thing that's been very important in this pandemic and the response to it has been structural biology that NIGMS supports, particularly cryo-electron microscopy. So we, along with the Eye Institute, lead the Common Fund Cryo-EM initiative, which is supporting 3 national cryo-EM centers, user facilities, and all 3 of those rapidly shifted their priorities to being almost exclusively COVID-19 related work. And of course, if you know about, for instance, the vaccines that are being developed, they relied heavily on an understanding of conformational changes that took place in the spike protein to understand what the immunogenic state was going to be. And those actually relied on cryo-electron microscopy in the first place.
Jon, your comment is prompting another question, which is about the basic discoveries in the biological sciences that you're most excited about. I mean, from all accounts, it is quite a golden time right now in the biological sciences. And I know your early work was on RNA research. We did a program a few weeks ago on mRNA work. And would love to hear your thoughts on what you're really excited about.
Well, it's wonderful for me to see that every time there's something in the newspaper that talks about the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, there's a picture of the ribosome translating the mRNA, which of course is very near and dear to my heart. So, as somebody said early on, all of the basic research that's gone on for 50 years or more on protein synthesis and messenger RNA and just RNA in general has gone into and allowed those vaccines to be developed. I mean, that's not an exaggeration to say that that's true. And what certainly excites me is what processes are undiscovered that are out there lurking in either traditionally studied organisms like fruit flies, or very strange organisms that may be living in swamps or rainforests or elsewhere, that could be critically important down the road to developing new technologies, new drugs, etc.
We did another program on RNAi as well. So as a non-scientist, I do feel like I've been getting an
lot of
education
RNA.
in RNA recently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we have time for another question.
Sure. Let's see here. Following up, did most of those initial Mira awardees apply for renewal of their awards?
Yes, actually, the first round of renewals has started to come in, and I believe 85% or more have applied for renewals, at least of the established investigators. The early stage haven't all come due yet, even in the first round, but majority of those have already applied for renewals as well. So that's very gratifying to see that that's taking place. And we want the renewal rate to be very high, the success rate for those renewals. That's part of the goal of the program, to improve stability so that the success rate of the renewal is quite high.
Great. I think we do have one more question from the audience. John, if you've got time for one more.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yes, one question about the vaccines. Were the COVID vaccines that are being considered now by the FDA, were those developed under active?
Well, so developed is a little complicated, I guess, but a number of them have been, the clinical trials are under the umbrella or are being facilitated through active. Yeah, and in fact, the Moderna vaccine was a collaboration with NIAID to start with. So that is, NIH has been very intimately involved in that one.
Great. One last question, maybe a good one to end on. How has the pandemic shaped maybe your future planning for the next 5 years, your strategic planning looking towards the future?
I think going back to the infectious disease modeling work, I think we need to look very carefully at some of the questions raised here. Even, what's the best way to support the public health decision makers, but not cross the line away from what is research into policy making where it shouldn't be crossed. So I think we need to give more thought to that. And really importantly, going back to what I said about data, I think we, NIGMS, but NIH as a whole, we need to really double down on health data and getting research access to health data. That's something that's been laid bare as a problem to me and to colleagues through this pandemic, that system just is not working for the American people. And I just think we need to do a lot more to get a better system of health record data for research and public health purposes.
Terrific. John, thank you so much. The work that NIGMS is doing in basic research and supporting early career scientists, and in the topic you just mentioned in terms of clinical data, putting NIH's resources to bear there is just terrific. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Really
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Just a couple of quick announcements. So next Monday, the 14th, we're going to hear from Dr. Peter Marks. He's the director of CBER, the FDA center with responsibility for vaccines. Dr. Marks has joined us on any number of occasions, and we really appreciate his time. We know how pressed he is right now, but he's going to talk with us about how the FDA is ensuring the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. It's certainly a lot of responsibility. And then on Wednesday, next Wednesday, December 16th at 1:30 Eastern, we are going to have a fireside chat with social change innovator and leader, Bill Novelli, and award-winning journalist, Frank Sesno. Bill is the founder of the Business for Impact program at Georgetown University at their School of Business. And he's also the former CEO of AARP, a founder and chair of Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and also a former Research America board member. He's going to discuss his new book, Good Business: The Talk, Fight, Win Way to Change the World. So we're very excited about that program. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you next week.